I'm a research analyst with the Population Research Institute, and I'm very grateful to be in attendance here and to try to combat all of the terrible things that they're trying to do here at ICPD25.
Good morning as well. My name is Joel Bockrath. I'm the Executive Vice President of Population Research Institute. Stephen Mosier is usually the one who would be at a conference like this, and he sends his greetings. Thank you very much for the opportunity to be a part of this very good platform.
Gray, we lost your name. I didn't hear it myself.
Joel Bockrath.
Bacray, right?
Bockrath.
Mm-hmm. Then we have someone from Colby Center.
Good morning. My name is Thomas Seiler from Germany. I'm a member of the Maximilian Kolbe Center for the Study of Creation, and our mission is to address the attack on human dignity by the underlying worldview of materialism and evolutionism. We show that these views are not compatible with Christian tradition nor with natural science.
All right. If you could pass the mic to your right, that's right.
Hi, I'm Federico. I'm from Argentina, like the Pope and Maradona. And I'm here thanks to the generosity of the Colby Institute. I'm also, I work for MoralNet. It's an organization to promote natural, law-based moral values.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. We also have someone from the Center for Family. Yes, Lisa.
Thank you. Lisa Carenti from Center for Family and Human Rights, or CFAM for short. We have offices in New York and Washington, D.C. We've spent the last 20 years pushing back against the UN agencies that are trying to create an international right to life, international right to abortion. And we're very, very, very critical of them, and that's why they did not allow us to attend this conference. And I think what you're doing in this parallel conference is a wonderful thing, and I want to thank you.
Thank you. CFAM keeps us updated with what is happening in New York. They publish a fax every Friday. So when you see Lisa, ask her how to subscribe for the newsletter, so you may be able to receive that information. While you're there, please talk to our delegates from Mexico. Let them tell us who they are.
Hi, I'm Vicente Segu. I'm from Mexico. We work on a foundation who support other foundations, Prolife, Profamily. Thank you. Wonderful event.
Thank you. All right. Then while you're still on that row, probably on your right, we have the Ugandan delegation. I can see the flag.
I am Dr. Sandra Nabachwa. I head Uganda Matters Pro-Life Apostolate, which is mainly in the Archdiocese of Kampala. Happy to be here.
Hello everybody, Zako Joyce is my name. I work with the Uganda Episcopal Conference as the National Youth Coordinator. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Janet Komakumo Potter. I work with the Catholic Secretariat of Uganda as the promoter, champion of fertility awareness methods that work. Thank you.
I earlier asked you to clap for the Ugandan delegation, not because I'm associated to Uganda in any way, but because we had the opportunity to address the Secretaries General of the AMESEA countries. For those delegates who are here, this university is owned by the Association of Member Episcopal Conferences for Eastern Africa. Sudan, South Sudan, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Malawi, Zambia. Those conferences of bishops own this university. So we had an opportunity to share the message about this conference. But because it was short notice, the Ugandans chose to come. It is easier for them. And some of them have taken rides. I think we have another Ugandan somewhere there. Could you wave? who traveled overnight. Karibuni. Okay. Then we come to Nigeria. I think there's someone from Nigeria down here. Okay. Come to the front, second row.
Thank you and good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Teresa Okafo, and I represent Foundation for African Cultural Heritage, and I also represent the World Congress for Families as the African representative. Foundation for African Cultural Heritage is a civil society organization. We try to influence at policy level. We work very closely with our government and also with the African Bloc at the United Nations and at the African Union. We are interested in promoting the innocence of children, protecting the innocence of children, promoting marriage as a permanent and exclusive union between a man and a woman, and also protecting society from all kind of deviance and sexual permissiveness. Thank you.
Okay. My first time to encounter Dr. Teresa Okafor, she was instructing us on the Creighton model of fertility. Women are looking for babies, they can't find them. She has the science of helping women get babies when they're struggling with barrenness. Okay. Then who else? Yes. Is World Youth Alliance with us already? Yes, Nadia. Okay, I'm now comfortable, prepared to start the presentation. We will get more time to interact and get to know ourselves. For now, I would like to invite our Vice Chancellor, Professor Stephen Mbugua, just to welcome us to the university.
Thank you very much, our MC. I think I'm a little bit shorter. All the protocols observed may recognize the presence of KCPF, KCCB, KAMSI, NCCK, the Catholic University, the Evangelical Alliance of Kenya, the Family Watch International, the CFAM, Caritas, Franciscan, Vitae et Familia, and also the Citizen Go, among all those who have been mentioned by our brother Kaketo, who have come to have this parallel session on the conference that is also going to take place in Kenya from this week. I think when we talk from the point of view of the human life, it is engraved in the Bible. And as we said earlier, we stand on the side of God. God has the authority over life from conception until natural death. I like to be extremely practical. It could have been me who was aborted. Would you have had a vice chancellor? It could have been you who would have been aborted. Would we have you here? So sometimes we think of it in a highly abstract format, and it is not good that we do that. Let us internalize this as part of us and as part of what we could have been a victim of. When we talk about the family, the sacredness of life, I think last year we celebrated the 50 years of Humane Vitae, and at that time the renewal to human family, to the dignity of life, to the sacredness of life, and to the support of life was brought very strongly. And therefore we as a Catholic Church, with our Christian and Muslim alliances that subscribe to this ideology, we are working very hard to ensure that everybody's conscientized, everybody's attention and attitudes are aligned to the right doctrines, to the right teachings that safeguard the human population. This is my take. Why do we think we have too many people? It is because there are not enough resources of them. And why are there not enough resources for them? Because of the billions of dollars or trillions of dollars that have been stolen from the public. And so they do not have access to basic life needs like health, shelter, education, and good jobs that would sustain them economically, because these monies are being held illegally, and those people cannot account on how they could acquire such money in less than 10 years without such a business like Bill Gates or other people, and they have become the richest of the richest. And therefore, it is good to look at the liberation of the human person from corruption, the liberation of the human person from selfishness, and the liberation of the human person from exclusive ways of thinking, so that the human family can work together to make sure that everybody has a right. In our country recently, we have had over $20 billion stolen within one project. If you look at that, if you give each family $1 million shillings in Kenya, that money would have provided schools, good roads, and piped water to maybe 50% of our households in Kenya. Does that make our nation poorer? No, it makes it more productive, because our mothers will take less time to fetch water from the rivers, rather than they will get it from their taps in the house, and they are going to be more economically viable and do other things that benefit the family and society. I have gone to the northern part of this country. I remember one time I carried quite a number of women in jerry cans, and I took them 18 kilometers to where they were getting water. They had already walked from 6 until 10 o'clock when I found them. This is true before God. And when it caught me, and it has never changed, about this mind of corruption and mismanagement and delusions that our nation has. So I take this opportunity to welcome you. Let us stand in solidarity to protect those who are manipulated because of their poverty, those who are manipulated because they have no rights, those who are manipulated because of their political alliances, so that we can be able to bring everybody on board. And we wish in a special way that this conference will not subscribe to what is being talked about today, because they have no rights, those who are manipulated because of their political alliances, so that we can be able to bring everybody on board. And we wish in a special way that this conference will not subscribe to what is being talked about today. I hope that Nairobi will not be part of the hashtag on the doctrine of death. And I am very fearful, because being Kenyan, I don't want our capital city to be hashtagged on the gospel of death. So I wish to welcome you, and hope that I will be with you longer. I'm sorry I'm leaving for Europe this evening, and I need to go and do shopping. I forgot to shop, and I have just been reminded. And therefore, I will be in, but if you see me go, it's not because I don't subscribe, but I'll be here for quite some time. So thank you to our international family for coming to support us. Thank you to our local family for coming to stand with us. And thank you for our queer family for being there to stand together as a global family, affirming the values and the Bible truths that we have received. Thank you, and God bless you.
What you do, and then do your presentation. Welcome. I have enough seats for you here so you could come. It's okay.
Good morning, everyone. How are you all doing this morning? Good. So this morning, I am with my two colleagues. My name is Lord Pomperada. I serve as the president of the World Youth Alliance. And with me this morning are my colleagues, Nadia Wolf, our director of advocacy, who's based in New York with me, and Miss Love, the director of advocacy for Europe, who's based in Brussels. So this morning, we are glad to share with you more about the World Youth Alliance, the work that we do, and some of the projects that we've been working with young people, not just here in Kenya and in Africa, but around the world. We want to share this message of hope, and we hope that these programs is something that you might be interested on. And I will begin. So next slide. So the World Youth Alliance is a global coalition of young people around the world between the ages of 10 to 30. So our members come from over 160 countries all around the world who are committed to promoting the dignity of the person and building solidarity among the youth from developed and developing countries. Next slide. One of our projects at the World Youth Alliance is called the Human Dignity Curriculum. Next. Before I talk about this curriculum, I'd like to touch a little bit first about the state of the world. So currently, as you see here in the slide, there's deficiencies in existing programs around the world, especially in terms of personal identity and helping young people really understand their personal identity and having a clear understanding of the world. And so these are also deficiencies in line with primary human competencies, and there's currently no program that addresses fully the needs of children and their families for the lifetime healthy integration of sexuality. Next slide. In the World Youth Alliance, one of our work is also to do research and do policy. We work at the United Nations, the European Union, and in country parliaments to promote the dignity of the person. As part of that work, we publish white papers of the World Youth Alliance, and these help our members and our friends around the world to learn about global issues and how can we solve these issues in a person-centered approach. And one of those white papers talks about sexual education. And in our white paper, we talk about that comprehensive sex education, or CSE, are not mandated by international law. So there's no international right to CSE, and there's no international treaty or document that talks about this, that it's like required for countries to do. What is universally acknowledged is that sex education must provide medically accurate information to children and adolescents. Furthermore, the Convention on the Rights of the Child requires state parties to respect the responsibilities, the rights, and duties of parents to provide in a manner consistent with the evolving capacities of the child appropriate direction and guidance in the child's exercise of his or her rights. Next slide, please. This is the definition of the World Health Organization on sexuality. And based on this definition is how they curate their different programs around the world, including their comprehensive sex education program. Next slide. Now I'd like to share with you a sample of how that looks like in the European region. So these are the actual guidelines, and these are the actual things that students learn in Europe based on that definition and based on that guidelines. So here, these are the definitions and some of the topics that they discuss from ages 0 to 4. Again, ages 0 to 4. So you see in some of the parts of the slide, I've highlighted, some of these things that should young people from ages of 0 to 4 should really talk about in their classroom. Next slide. So these are topics that are being discussed for ages 4 to 6 years old. If you look at the second row, secret loves, first loved, unrequited love, like why would children and young people, ages 4 to 6, be studying about these things in their classroom from a very young age? Next slide. And these are the ones that children from 6 to 9 years old learn in school. So these are the guidelines that the WHO has based their current curriculum in the European region. And as part of that, if they have success, this could potentially be brought to other countries around the world. And so we at the World Youth Alliance are obviously very concerned about this, and that is the reason why we've developed the Human Dignity Curriculum. Next slide. So the good for human persons is to flourish as persons, to realize our own nature, to develop in fullness what we actually are. And this is very core to the creation of our curriculum. Next slide. The Human Dignity Curriculum, or the HDC, was developed because we believe that the most powerful kind of education is one that is rooted on a strong sense of self. So every lesson in the HDC focuses on the big picture, and it really helps them understand the human person and his capacity to always choose the good, leading to human flourishing. In our early work in the World Youth Alliance, we began forming young people in high schools and in universities. But later on, as part of our work, we said, why don't we start their formation while they're young? And that means while they're in kindergarten. Why don't we start teaching them about human dignity, pursuing excellence, all these ideas? And the end goal of the HDC is to have behavioral change, to develop healthy habits and decision-making skills. And this, of course, takes time, but based on our pilots, which I'm going to show with you later on, we've seen some significant projects and progress that the students have had through the years of undergoing the curriculum. Next slide. So the curriculum is currently available from kindergarten to grade 8. We're hoping to launch the high school curriculum in the next year. And these really help students understand who they are and who they can be because of the dignity that they possess. At first, we were like, how can we teach philosophy to kindergarten students? That's like, how do you do that? But with a team of educators, experts from around the world, they really helped us in developing this curriculum to help students understand who they are as human beings, what separates them from animals, from plants, the hierarchy of beings, and that they can be truly excellent through the daily decisions that they can do in their lives. Next slide. So these are the lessons that the students undergo for each grade level. So all lessons start with human dignity. Then they study personal identity, principled freedom. What is freedom? And how can I use my freedom towards the common good, towards developing myself, respect for oneself, respect for others, and respect for human dignity. Next slide. So as mentioned earlier, the development of the curriculum was really aimed towards behavioral changes from these students and these young people whom we work with. And so our outcome is really to see and encounter individuals, for these kids, who strive to understand who they are, believe in their potential to become, know how to respect themselves and others from a very young age, learning that my dignity is intrinsic, it's universal, and it's not given by the state, and every person around me has the same dignity that starts from conception. And so the curriculum really gives young people and students this vocabulary that they're very excited about, they're very happy every time they do HC class, because it's the only class where they can actually study themselves and learn how to become excellent students. They also study are critical about the world and around them, and even from a very young age that they can already make healthy and excellent decision making. And it aims to empower and influence them and the people around them. Next slide. In addition, the implications of having a clear view of the person. So as I've mentioned, giving this capacity for kids and students to use this vocabulary of human dignity, of excellence from a very young age, this is something that we've seen that they don't only use inside the classroom, but they even use in their school, when they go back home to their schools, and all these behavioral changes are starting to become evident. They're starting to understand their human purpose and fostering their moral imagination and really building healthy relationships around them from a very young age. Next slide. So the HDC includes lesson plans for teachers, visual aids for students. Of course, we work with different levels, and so for each grade, we've prepared also different activities, exercises, games, videos, very interactive materials, which I will share with you in the next couple of slides. Next slide, please. So these are some of the lesson plans that we prepared for the teachers. Something that I wanted to share and highlight about the curriculum is we've implemented this in over 15 countries around the world for the past 2 years. And every time we go to a country or to a new school, we always work with the teachers and the principal and the people involved, even sometimes with the parents, to really make sure that we use stories and examples that reflect the culture and that really something that the students can understand based on their own community and based on their own culture. So we're open to cultural modifications as we work with different schools around the world. Next slide. These are some of the students working on their activity sheets. Next slide. We also have activities throughout the grades that we prepared for the teachers to use. Of course, these are also open in case you want to propose a different activity to be used in class. Next slide. And really having that strong teacher-student engagement makes a big difference. And teaching human dignity to your class is something that the students, again, are really excited. They're very happy to learn about this. And really the role of the teacher is very important because even after class, they continue to use all those ideas and all those vocabulary. Next slide. There's also an optional graduation ceremony at the end where we recognize all their achievements and the work that they've done during the classes. Next slide. So these are the core themes of the curriculum. So we start with human dignity, then we study the hierarchy of human beings, what are your powers, and we study intentional actions, human freedom, persons as subjects versus objects, human excellence, friendship, and heroes. For instance, for friendship and heroes, the students are very excited because they can begin to understand that heroes, that they themselves can become heroes by pursuing freedom for excellence, and they're trying to recognize that at a very young age, they could really pursue something that is true and in the pursuit of human excellence. Next slide. For the World Youth Alliance, we believe that standards for personal identity education must first and foremost acknowledge human dignity in order to help individuals and make healthy choices for themselves. And then from there, students will be more knowledgeable in treating others with respect and love, and these contributes to the formation of healthy and responsible citizens at a very young age. And we believe that by training individuals, starting from kindergarten to their early years, could eventually lead to strong personal development for the kids. Later on, eventually, a stronger community in the school could lead to stronger families, to society, and these are going to be our future leaders. Leaders in the government, in business, and even in their own families. So from a very young age, once they start learning all of these ideas, they can later on have really strong character. Next slide. After the curriculum for the later grades, for grades 6, 7, and 8, we also have an optional health and sexual education module. And here we divide the boys and the girls. They study about health and hormone connection, emotion and hormone connection, and integrating health and human dignity. So here they study about reproductive health, the reproductive system, and they also study how they can be respectful of others during this time. And so the two optional courses are the Teen Men and the Teen Men. And my colleague Nadia will share more about this health program later on that we integrate, and we've seen really significant progress for some of our students, especially when they've done both the human dignity curriculum and this health class. Next slide. The curriculum has been implemented in over 20 schools in the United States, and one of our partner schools is a charter school in the Bronx. And I would like to share with you this video. It's about a 3 to 4 minute video that really captures how the curriculum transformed the students. You will be amazed how 7, 8-year-olds capture all of these ideas and how they're able to use them not just in the classroom but in their daily lives when they go out to their class or when they go home. So I'd like to request our tech team now to please show the video. Later on, I'll also share with you some of the partners that we've had in the past 2 to 3 years. Most recently, we had our pilot here in Kenya just this year in partnership with the Mercy Education Office. This year, we've worked with them in 2 or 3 schools here in the country. The amazing thing is with the curriculum, we not just only work with schools, but we've also worked with other NGOs. We've even worked with other youth communities around the world, out-of-school youth, street children, children in the slums, orphanage. And so we've worked with a variety of partners and schools around the world, and we've seen, regardless where they study this, the lessons and the impact that the students receive is just something that we've never thought that it would be possible. And so in the testimonials that you'll see with some of our students in the Bronx, in New York, you'll see how they're able to really see a different perspective after studying these ideas on human dignity and the value of life.
Your job right now is to identify your hero. You're going to identify your hero. Ask yourself, why are they my hero? Say it. Why are they my hero? And what actions make them excellent? Say it. And what
Thank you. If you could go back to the slides, please. So imagine the 6, 7-year-old students just talking about human dignity, how they changed their lives, going home instead of using my iPad. Now I fold my clothes. I ask my mom what my mom needs at home. And in the school that we've worked with, we've been working with them for about 5 years now, and the principal shared with us last year that they had like the highest test scores in the whole of Bronx for the first time. And they're saying that one of the reasons how that happened was because of the curriculum, because the students are trying to understand about their freedom. One of the students said that now that I understand more about my freedom, I know that even if I hate math or science, I have to study them because it's good for me. Or if I know that I want to talk to my classmates at class, even though I really want to talk to my classmates, I don't have to disturb them because I want them to be excellent and to be focused in their school. So these are some of the things that we're trying to see, all these behavioral changes we're trying to see with our partners. Next slide. So one of the impacts that really the curriculum brings to students is it leads to excellent decision making. These are our 2 quotes of our students. So one of them, a 5th grader, shared that thanks to the course, I understand that I'm important and so are the rest of my peers. Even when I'm angry, I have to think about how I act, so whatever I do does not affect my friends or my family. Another 8th grader shared that the stories in HDC inspire me to forgive even when the most awful things are done to me. Another 3rd grader from our pilots in Mexico shared with us that I'm beginning to understand that it is through my character that I reveal myself, that if I'm a good person, that I also inspire others to be a good person. Next slide. So for the past 10 years, about a decade that we've been working on the curriculum, we've had early pilots in the US, in St. Lucia, and in the Philippines. Currently, it's being implemented in 20 schools in the US. We're glad to share that we have officially received government approvals from the governments of Croatia and the Philippines. This means that our curriculum can be brought to all public schools all around the country. We've also, as I've mentioned, we've also worked with public and private schools, with NGOs, and even with some parents who do homeschooling. In the coming year, we will be launching the curriculum in Spanish, Hungarian, and Swahili. Just this year, we've launched our new pilots in Kenya, in Lebanon, in Romania, and in Ukraine. And for 2020, we're preparing for national pilots in Nigeria, Tanzania, and a couple of other partners in the Caribbean, in South Asia, in Trinidad and Tobago, in Nepal, in Bangladesh, all around the world. And we feel that this curriculum is really something that could make a difference for the lives of these kids. Next slide. I wanted to end with this quote from one of our partner schools in the Bronx in the US. Stephanie Soroki, the managing director of the charter school, shared that the human dignity curriculum has helped both the children we serve and their teachers develop a clear understanding of what it really means to be human and deep sense of meaning at purpose. Imagine how our world would look like if all of our children will start studying about human dignity, about freedom for excellence, and that they can all become heroes, not just tomorrow, but starting today at this very minute through the decisions that they do in their very lives. Next slide. So we'll be happy to answer questions later after my colleague presents. Next slide. And aside from the curriculum, we also have other educational programs for young people. We have internships, conferences and training programs here in Kenya, in Africa, and around the world. And we'll be happy to talk more about that with you later. If you want to learn more, we also have some of our team members at the back wearing white shirts, and we have materials that we can share with all of you. Thank you very much for having us here to share with you about our work. And now I'd like to call on my colleague, Nadia Wolf, to share more about our women's health program. Thank you very much. Asante sana.
So they're just bringing up my PowerPoint presentation. Everything needs to be lower for me. Anyway, I'm so glad to be here. I'm going to be talking about our women's health program, which is called FEM. FEM stands for Fertility, Education, and Medical Management. Some of you may be familiar with that. And once I get the slides up, we can kind of go in more detail. But I'm the policy person at WIA. So I'm often at the UN. I'm hearing these debates. I'm watching how language is used to really promote things that not every country really agrees on. And it gets pushed through and implemented with funding. And so For why we always come in with this idea, we're not just about no. We're not just saying no to bad ideas, right? We're saying yes to good ideas. We're saying, how can we give something better? Because we know what is good for the human person. And so we know that we have to respect the dignity of the person in all those areas. We know that women deserve good health care and that that is often underserved, but that it's not necessarily met with the models that are currently out there, okay? So with this ICPD25 that's happening this week, you know, it's outside of the UN traditional fora. It's not really clear, is this a UN event? They're saying it's not, but then maybe it will be. Countries are going to make commitments, but they're not binding. We have to make our own commitments to things that are good. We have to have our own answers to things. If there's a vacuum, they're prepared to fill it, and we have to be too. With things that really respect human dignity, that really respect who we are as people, and that really meet those needs holistically. So FEM tries to do that by looking at women's needs in a much broader way, and not just saying, well, do you want to get pregnant or not get pregnant? Can we give you the pill for now? That's going to solve your problems, okay? You're having pain, we'll give you the pill. You don't want to have a baby right now, we'll give you the pill. And also, even if you have cultural objections, even if you have ethical objections, even if you have religious objections, we know what's best for you, and that's what we're going to fund. And a huge amount of development funding is coming into developing countries and telling them, this is what you need, instead of asking, how can we help you? What are your real needs? Is that what you actually want? Okay? So I always go to these things and I hear about these unmet needs for family planning, and when even the groups that are promoting contraception do the research and they ask women, why are you not using it? Women in Africa say, I don't want it, for the vast majority. Very few of them say, I can't get it. And I'm guessing that even in Nairobi, it's very easy to go to a public health center and find those materials, find those commodities, all those things that are guaranteed to give you a short road to convenience, but not really going to meet the problems, and certainly not going to promote respect for the dignity of the person or for women's bodies. So, what is FEM? We are knowledge-based, preventive-based reproductive health care program. We teach women to understand their bodies, understand their hormonal health, monitor it, and then we back it up with support on the medical side as well. So it's necessary for every woman at all stages of her reproductive life to have this information and knowledge. And we're happy to share that knowledge, we're happy to give that knowledge, we're working on materials, we've got our staff here who are working with partners, and we'd love to partner with you too. Okay? So next slide, please. This is the definition of reproductive health from ICPD. A state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being. It's a lot longer than that. We couldn't fit it on the whole slide. But in all areas related to the reproductive system. Okay. Notice that that doesn't include abortion. It also doesn't mean that we can just solve every problem by handing someone hormonal contraception. Okay. Reproductive health doesn't include abortion. That's in ICPD itself. You wouldn't know it from the way that they're talking about reproductive rights constantly in every material for this conference. But that's part of the understanding that was agreed 25 years ago in Cairo. Okay. Next slide, please. For WIA's perspective and for FEM, right? We've been trying to influence policy. We just turned 20 this year, so you know we're a member of our own organization. We're 20. Our membership is ages 10 to 30. We've been trying to influence on the policy side, that we make sure that the language is not promoting things that are really problematic, things that really violate culture, a lot of national laws. But we also realize that whatever the policy is, that's where the funding goes. And the funding has to be implemented by somebody. And if we're there to implement it, we can make sure that it's a good program. And if we're not there to implement it, then we get what we get. And that's often going to be the exact same stuff we've gotten for years, every year since Cairo. Okay. Next slide, please. So, what's our program? What's our solution? How do we implement it? This is where FEM comes in. FEM has an education component. It has medical management, which is training for doctors to help them improve diagnosis and also treatment. Because a lot of times women have these problems and they're thought, well, you know, it's just hard being a woman. It is, but not for those reasons necessarily. We can get better treatment. We have a health center model. We have medical protocols to train with that. And we also now have an iPhone and an Android app, which are free. And we've seen a big uptick in downloads in Africa following the Android launch, which we are really thrilled to get out there. Next slide, please. So hormones rise and fall during the cycle. This is a sequential process, okay? So a healthy reproductive cycle, you have to kind of hit all of these levels. Each hormone triggers another hormone, and we'll kind of go through. So the brain and the ovary send messages back and forth. The brain starts a follicle-stimulating hormone. Click forward, please. That starts the follicle to develop. Yep, great. So estrogen stimulates the release of the luteinizing hormone. The luteinizing hormone triggers ovulation. The empty follicle then produces progesterone. And what you see is a pattern that kind of, many of them go towards a peak at the same sort of time. And then we have that kind of, and then we have that downfall of hormones towards the end of the cycle leading to menstruation. Okay. Next slide, please. One more? Okay, great. So there are a lot more hormones than just two, but these are the two that we're all kind of most familiar with. And why we have this slide up here is to show that each hormone has an important role to play, and they're often kind of complementary. So if you're on a progesterone-only pill or combined estrogen-progesterone oral contraceptive, you're getting some of these, but you're not necessarily getting them in the levels that you need, and you're certainly not getting them in that cycle that's triggering each phase of the menstrual cycle, or the ovulatory cycle. So if you notice, for estrogen, right, it's toning and contracting, it's proliferating, bone formation support, you know, it's kind of increasing your blood sugar and blood clotting, fluid retention, brain cells stimulated, all those sort of active things. And then you've got progesterone, and progesterone is kind of the stabilizing influence. So this kind of dynamism and activism in partnership, where progesterone is relaxing, it's maintaining. All that kind of work that the estrogen is doing has to be held up. So it's normalizing that tissue. And what you'll see is you want both of those. You need both of those for a healthy cycle. Next slide, please. A lot of women take the pill not because they necessarily are looking for contraceptive purposes. Some of them take it for that as well as other reasons, but a lot will say, I have problems that this is the only solution I've been offered, right? Probably there's a number of people here who know or have experienced themselves where, you know, you went to the doctor with issues, or your friend did, or your mother or sister, and they were told, well, you have this problem, but the only option that we have is to regularize your cycle. And that will kind of take care of some pain issues. We'll make sure that you kind of bleed regularly. It's not, you know, but it's not actually getting you to that healthy cycle of levels going through the whole time. So for someone getting irregular cycles, pain, bleeding disorders, acne, mood swings, etc., PCOS, all those kind of common complaints, you know, symptom management is not a small thing, but it's not the same as healing. It's not the same as restoring to health. And if we have ways to restore people to health, then out of respect for their integrity as a person, they need that available, right? They need better options. Of course, there also are side effects from the pill. There are some risks of cancer, especially if started as a teenager: stroke, blood clots, bone loss, minerals loss, and of course, you're infertile while you're on it, so if you want to have a child, that's a problem. But really what's happening is that it's symptom management. It's not treating the underlying problem. It's actually allowing that to become worse, right? Remember, think about, you have a small problem, you fix it early, now it stays a small problem and it's been resolved. You have a small problem and you don't fix it, it kind of exacerbates and gets worse and worse, and all of a sudden you've got a bigger problem. So we owe women better than symptom management, and we can do better than that. Next slide, please. This slide just demonstrates why the pill is not, or how the pill is failing to solve these issues, okay? So a hormonally sufficient cycle, you're gonna have that kind of peaks and valleys of each hormone in cycle triggering each other in this kind of grand dance between the brain and the reproductive system. If you're on the pill, basically everything stays flat. So there are some levels there. It's not like there's no hormones, but it suppresses the natural hormonal activity. It doesn't get it to healthy levels. And you're not going to have any real, like the bleeding at the end is fake. It's not signifying anything, right? Next slide, please. So one thing that so part of our education program is really just for women to keep track of these things. We've given them tools. This is screenshots from our app. This can also be done on paper. We also have partners in areas affected by Boko Haram that have found, they created a very unique method for themselves, actually using leaves from a local plant, where they were able to teach women, so it really is adaptable. You just have to be able to figure out, what am I observing? And every woman can do this, just on a daily basis. Am I observing fluid? Am I observing bleeding? What does that mean? And it also helps them to track their symptoms. So you might find out as you're going through, for the ladies in the house, oh yeah, oh, I'm sad every time of the month, this time of the month. Like every month, I'm sad around this same time. Maybe that's connected to something. You might notice that you're experiencing symptoms at certain periods, okay? And also it creates a diagnostic tool for doctors to help them understand. So that leads into how we train doctors. We are not just saying, now you know about your body and you're fine, okay? That's a starting point, it's not an ending point. If they're saying women need contraceptive to treat their hormonal problems, to treat their medical conditions, and we're saying that doesn't treat it, then we have to be able to treat it. And that starts really with diagnosis. Next slide, please. The FEMS partner organization is the Reproductive Health Research Institute, which has created an entire protocol, basically almost like a decision tree for how to treat. So I don't know if anyone has had experience going to an endocrinologist and you end up with this kind of long process of trying to figure out what exactly is wrong. Maybe your levels are fine. Maybe they say, well, look, that's just normal. Just because something is common doesn't mean it's normal, doesn't mean it's healthy. So we have this whole system, clinical history, that would include the charting, physical examination, lab tests, where our values are a little bit narrower and they're taken in conjunction with the charting to get to a better diagnosis. Basic hormonal profile and ultrasound if needed. Next slide, please. So first off, not every cycle, like we can identify some unhealthy elements right off the bat. Is the luteal phase long enough? Is the cycle the appropriate length? If you're having a really short cycle or a really long cycle, that might indicate that something's wrong. Next slide, please. So the first step for many cases with the doctor is going to be to do a basic hormonal profile. That involves these kind of essential hormones in those levels. We often are a little bit more precise on that, but also combined with the cycle charting, a doctor might say, well, I can see on your cycle that you're right on the edge of normal, but for you it's not normal, right? There's no standard woman. I think everybody in this room probably knows. And there actually is not necessarily an exact level that we're looking for each woman either. It can vary. But when you combine it with a woman's own observations, you get a very clear sense of what's going on in her body and what needs to be corrected. Next slide, please. So for a doctor measuring FSH, the follicle stimulating hormone, they're going to look at the levels. Depending on what those are, they'll make different decisions. This is just an example, so if we have any medical personnel, we do train in this every year. And that will kind of take them through and help them get to a diagnosis in a much clearer way. Next slide, please. We also include ultrasounds. I'm sure that there are actual medical professionals in the house. I am not one, I'm a lawyer, so I'm not gonna try to read that for you. But those can indicate, basically, we can have things like uneven development of the endometrium during a cycle, which might indicate that there's some sort of hormonal imbalance. Next slide, please. So the protocols also include symptomatic diagnosis. So, okay, woman's complaining, I still have acne. I'm not a teenager anymore. What's this doing on my face? Physical exam, hormonal exam. Kind of look at what are the possible causes. Again, go through all of those elements. Okay? And next slide, please. And the reason that that's important is that, look, a lot of doctors will run blood tests, but being able to interpret those in a way that is helpful and applicable is more challenging, right? Because it's a very complex system. Hormones are not simple. If you look at this slide, I know it's probably a little bit hard to read, but coming from the back, I should probably stay close to the microphone so you can hear me. If you look at all of the conditions, there are 3 hormones towards just to the right of the cycle chart on the right hand, or just to the left of the cycle chart on the right hand side. Those are all very similar. They're all low. So if those are the only 3 hormones that you test, or you test it at the wrong point in the cycle. All these 5 different diagnoses could get the exact same treatment, the exact same diagnosis. But if you look to the second column from the left, you'll see the primary hormonal disturbance is different in every single one. And so when you identify the primary hormonal disturbance, what you end up with is a clear diagnosis. A woman who has hyperprolactinemia is not in the same situation as a woman who is anorexic, okay? Which are just 2 of the examples up here. I know it's a little bit small to read. So just to, next slide, please. So that's kind of an overview. We want to give you an intro into FEM. That, again, we're going to hear a lot of things about the problems with the things that are being promoted here. That's really important. Take all of that energy, take all of that kind of desire to correct it, and we want to channel it towards solutions, channel it towards things that are going to fill that gap. Think of it like a vaccine, right? We get in first with the good stuff, and the bad stuff doesn't take effect, okay? So for us at World Youth Alliance, that includes our Human Dignity curriculum, that includes FEM, and of course we're partnering with our Medical Research Institute, which is then using more and more research to get better and better diagnosis and treatment and training doctors continually on that basis. So for us, when we look at women's health care, we don't want it to be reduced to the pill. We don't want it to be promoted, we don't want abortion to be treated like that. We want instead to be saying, how actually can we serve women's needs? And we think FEM is a really good way to do that. So thank you very much for your time. We'll go back to the open forum.
Thank you, Nadia. So I will actually, as our moderator, if we will proceed now with the open forum, or will we proceed with another presentation or speakers for this program?
I'll invite you to sit down. It will proceed into the open forum now. I'd like to lay a little background to why we had World Youth Alliance come over. We indicated they're offering alternatives. The Catholics in this room know that Humane Vitae, paragraph number 96, invited Catholic doctors to go and do the research necessary to help women regulate birth with methods that are consistent with the church's teaching. The process that has been described, fertility education and medical management, is a serious attempt in that direction. As I indicated earlier, ICPD25 is about alternatives that work. This is an alternative that they're not usually willing to listen to. But for some reason, it also seems to be that it's an alternative that is not yet very well known amongst those of us who should know it. The sisters in the hall, I'm glad you're taking notes. I hope you're not preparing for your cards, but I'm thankful that you're taking notes because the women listen to you more than they would listen to men. The young girls here, I'm told there's a terrible disease going on amongst students, probably not in Kwea, but they could be elsewhere. There's that thing you swallow every Monday morning. You've heard about it? In Aitwaje? That thing that people swallow every Monday morning. Father Chaplain, don't look behind, please. People will not give me the answer. Yes, that thing that people swallow every Monday morning that will cause you problems. There is a science that exists in how to monitor the fertility of every woman. The groups that are here are proposing actually that other than telling young ladies and teenagers about the menstrual cycle, maybe they should be knowing about their ovulatory cycle. That might be actually the real intervention in some of these things. We have also been asked, when we oppose comprehensive sexuality education, they say, you church people, you just make noise. What alternative do you have to offer? you just object to these things, what alternative do you have to offer? Now, World Youth Alliance has given us the Human Dignity Curriculum, loaded with principles of chastity, loaded with all that the young people should know, not to abuse themselves and each other. Now, I think it is time to take questions for World Youth Alliance. If you have a question, clarification to seek, a microphone should be close to you. Paul, microphones, please. Okay.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the wonderful contributions. Emmanuel Mwamba. I'm Zambia's ambassador to Ethiopia. I'm also the permanent representative to the African Union. We have expressed some concern in regarding to the ICPD25 because the UNFPA brought it to the African Union through a commission, one of the commissioners, and asked our technical experts from our capitals to a meeting in Cairo, and that meeting came up with the commitments where they tabled the so-called Nairobi statement, and that position then was supposed to come to the ICPD as Africa's position from our technocrats. At our level as permanent representatives, we objected to this process because that was alien to the manner in which the African Union come up with positions. It has to go through policy organs. Secondly, the concerns on the so-called Nairobi statement is that it seems to be a staging post for pro-LGBT and pro-abortion organizations. And I think that should not be the case, because the ICPD, which we are commemorating, which occurred in 1994, didn't drive the agenda in a narrow manner. It handled population and development issues. We are concerned with two things that I wish to speak to, and I'm glad that the speakers brought it to the attention of the meeting, on sexual reproductive health and on comprehensive sexual education. First of all, as governments in Africa, we have no problem with sexual reproductive health, but we have problems when the UNFPA put it as sexual reproductive health and rights, because when you introduce the word right, it brings separate connotations. And the specific targeting of adolescents is also a matter of concerns, because if you give it as a matter of right, that means the adolescents that are literally still children as defined in Africa, because they are below the age of 21, it gives them right to sex, right to contraceptives, right to abortion services without consent of the parents. This matter violates several cultural, ethical, and family issues, because these are considered as children under our guide. The next one is on comprehensive sexuality education. I think we've all paused. When you look at sexual education, it sounds innocent, but you have to go into the curriculum which it is offering. It is extremely graphic, especially that is targeting children below the ages of 7 to 12. It blurs their gender identity because many genders are introduced. It attacks the family because it tells you that two males can be a couple and two females can be a couple. The elements it introduces are extremely strange to Africa, and that's why we have said for any document or any description, if they say sexual reproductive health and rights, we want a listings of what is meant by that, because they make governments commit to broad terms, which you have no problems with it, but the listings underneath could be extremely dangerous. Thank you very much, and let's soldier on with the fight.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you very much. My name once again is Janet Komagum from the Uganda Catholic Medical Bureau. I want to add my voice to the previous speaker on applauding World Youth Alliance for the good work that you're doing. When we were coming here, me and my colleague Joy, Dr. Sandra, was saying we need what works. Because the truth is, they are not sleeping. They are thinking day and night, and they have the resources. So how do we also get something, get moving forward? One good thing is we have a very big resource, and that is we have the people, and we also have the will. Thank you so much, World Youth Alliance, for bringing this alternative to the comprehensive sexual education framework. It's something that has perturbed all of us. At the Catholic Secretariat, we have made lines on key issues that we want to be changed or updated. But the question is, can we still do the same thing with this team? It looks like we are on completely divergent roads. So if we come up with such alternatives, this is extremely good. So my request is, how fast can you reach Uganda?
They're already in Tanzania at least.
Oh yeah, that's good. So, and also the fertility awareness methods, we are proud. These are very practical solutions. The Catholic Secretariat of Uganda, already we are promoting fertility awareness methods in about 30% of all the Catholic health hospitals. So this is something that we see women are coming for methods. Women didn't really know, but also there's a very big gap, not just in the community, but also the health workers themselves have a big gap. So going forward, we really need to come up with solutions that can help us to be able to reach the young people, to reach the women, to empower our health workers, and even the religious leaders to fully stand and we move this fight. Thank you.
All right, we'll just take one more. There's a lady in red here. Ah, okay, let me first see the hands. Let me see the hands again. Okay, all right, so the lady in red takes it now. Just do that round and then they will respond.
Thank you, the organization that presented. But my question is, why am I hearing this information now? Me, and I'm an educated person. What about the other people out there that did not come here, who have no access to this? I think there's a need for other channels of communication. Talking about social media, I'm a social media freak, but I haven't seen anything in the social media. So it seems to me we need to do a better job of getting the information out there, educating people, and even the politicians, policymakers. So this is the problem with the researchers and technical people. We do research, but it's ourselves.
For us, sexual and reproductive health and rights is one of the cornerstones of our development cooperation policy, and we try to use
An organization, I'm challenging you. It's too busy in the offices, too busy producing papers, too busy talking to yourselves, and the majority of people are not getting it. Thank you.
At least you're here. Thank you very much. There's a hand here before we go back.
With the sole exception of barrier contraceptives without spermicide, all contraceptives are abortifacient, as proven by medicine. Do you include this in the curriculum, and what solutions do you offer for family planning exactly?
McRae, you've asked a very good question. Could you do it again?
With the sole exception of barrier contraceptives without spermicide, all contraceptives are abortifacient. Do you include this in the curriculum, and what solutions do you offer for family planning?
For the benefit of our listeners, an abortifacient is something that causes an abortion. And McRae has just indicated that except the barrier methods, such as condoms and the spermicides, everything else that is called a contraceptive is actually an abortifacient. Okay? Then he asks his question. So we could come back to the front now to respond.
All right, thank you so much everyone for your comments. I think a lot of them are more my area, but I'm going to ask you about spreading it. So I'm the Director of Advocacy for the World Youth Alliance. I'd like to thank the ambassador of was it Zambia? To Ethiopia, right, for his comments, yeah. On the ICPD25 process, it has been notably lacking in transparency, even for a UN process, and even for member states. And I am not surprised, although I was not aware of the way that it had kind of circumvented some of the practices of the African Union. I'm not surprised because even member states at the UN were telling me we're asking questions and we're not getting answers. The document was prepared basically in secret. There's no chance to really negotiate it. The first draft was amateur hour. The second draft was cleverer, but still all the same problems. And some countries are even not attending. It really has lacked a lot of transparency, and it is promoting things that many countries would not agree with, and that certainly go far in advance of ICPD's original consensus, which kind of hit this very delicate balance of kind of recognizing that countries have the right to set their own policies on abortion. Family law is also part of that. It's also purely a domestic matter, and that basically they keep going beyond it. Every time that they've had an anniversary, they've gone beyond it. This year, they didn't think that they could get away with it at the UN, so they've come here away from prying eyes. They've made kind of very nebulous statements about it's not really a UN event, but we're using all the UN things, and it's a UN agency that's running it. So it's very underhanded, and it really is not respecting the consensus at Cairo, which said countries have a right to set their own policies on these matters, and people are at the center of development, and we have to respect the sovereignty and how each domestic process handles that. The comment from the representative of the Ugandan Catholic Medical Association, we want to get it to Uganda. We want to get it everywhere. You are completely right. The other side is not sleeping. They are active continually. They have programs that they have been working on for years. And I think we can end up behind because we lack all of the, all the resources that get put behind there, a lot of money behind it, a lot of aid money behind all of those things. And so we have to use the resources that we have, which really is our human resources. ICPD says that human beings are at the center of concerns for development, that people are our greatest resource, and then it spent a whole lot of its paragraphs talking about how to have fewer people. So you can see the tension there. Our goal has to be to promote things that really are person-centered. We're happy to partner with people. We're working to get some of these materials into some of the more local languages. I understand Uganda is more, Luganda, yeah, rather than Swahili as the common language there. We'd love to get into that. It's going to take us some time because we don't have the resources of the other side, but we are committed to getting there. And anything you can do to help us, we're happy to work with medical associations. We want to be there. We want to be helping. We want to give you these tools. And it does have that family planning aspect, but it also has that health aspect, which really does need to be met and really isn't met for a lot of women. Why haven't you heard of us? I don't know. I'm sorry. You want to take that one? Okay. We are working here. We do have an office in Nairobi. I'm happy to introduce you to my colleagues, Cynthia and Kevin. Cynthia's at the back there in the blue shirt.
All right.
Cynthia is our regional director for the Africa region. She has been working on building partnerships, as has our colleague Kevin.
And Kevin is right
here
there
as well.
Kevin
He's on the other side of the back. we're working on building these partnerships, and we're happy to partner with people. We have a lot of young people members, and we are active on social media. I follow Via Africa's Instagram and see the great work that they're doing there. But we do have to get the word out more, and we're working on it. And if you have any ideas, we're happy to hear from you, and we're happy to work with you to share it along your channels. You're right, they've got, some of it is just capacity. We're working on with fewer human and monetary resources, but we're happy to do what we can, and we'd love to talk with you more about it. As to the contraceptive pill being abortifacient, a couple of things. One, in the children's curriculum, no, we're not discussing contraceptives because it's not appropriate for children. Two, in the FEM curriculum, the FEM education for women, it's a 3-hour program, so it's done in 3 single-hour segments. And it does discuss the effects and the ways in which contraceptives, particularly hormonal contraceptives, work. As for the abortifacient nature, that is, basically the argument is that it thins the uterine lining, and that thinning of the uterine lining makes the uterus inhospitable to an embryo or a zygote so that it will not implant. If a woman has ovulated over and on top of the pill anyway, it's clearly not working as effectively as it was supposed to, and the difference is like micrometers. It's very, very small. So that's not what we're hanging our hat on. It's certainly something to be aware of, the discussion about that, but I think in terms of just the things that are really medically certain, there are all sorts of really good reasons why this is not sufficient, why it's not going to help. Do you want to talk some about the promotion stuff?
I know we're short on time, but just to mention 2 things. Number one, at the World Youth Alliance, we're very happy to work with different partners. We don't have all the resources, but we believe that when we partner together, bring our resources together, we can definitely make it happen. We've seen that we make it happen in other countries around the world, and I'm sure that here in Kenya, we can also make it happen. And number 2 is that, in later sometime in the afternoon, we will still be here. Some of our staff members and interns are also here. We are really happy to meet with you if you have particular questions on some of our programs, and we'll also be happy to share with you more information in detail in our conversations later on. So once again, thank you very much for having us, and we look forward to really working together and helping Kenya and helping all of you in this coming days with all the Nairobi Summit. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. And Professor, as you've heard the call for partnerships, I eavesdropped on World Youth Alliance. I'm advised that they're already starting to work with St. Augustine University in Tanzania. Is that the case? Down in Mwanza. It might be strategic for us to start relating with them, our Faculty of Education, the nursing department. Yes, so there are opportunities most probably to be explored in future. Thank you very much for that. I'd like now to invite Family Watch International, the team of 3, to come and take up their position so that we can listen to them about the road to Nairobi. We allow our Vice Chancellor to go. As he indicated, he has to travel. Thank you very much, Professor, for having created the time to be with us. We are grateful. Do you know someone who is missing out on what is going on here? Sister Catherine, is there anyone missing out on what is going on here? Send them a text. We are live on Queer Digital Media Services. We are live on YouTube. People could follow from wherever they are. We are live on YouTube, Queer Digital Media Services. When you check it out, you'd find that these proceedings are running there. So, good people, I'd like to welcome Family Watch International. I'd like to hand the microphone straight to them. Introduce yourselves and just dive in. We are 3 minutes into your time, but it's okay, we will survive. Welcome to Africa once again.
Thank you. It's my honor and privilege to be with you today to discuss this very important subject, the Nairobi Summit Exposing the UN SRHR Agenda. Family Watch International has consultative status at the United Nations. We work day in and day out, working on issues both in Geneva at the UN Human Rights Council and in New York at UN headquarters. I want to introduce my team. I'm the president of Family Watch International, and I have here with our new team, this is Annie Franklin. She's been with Family Watch since the beginning. She's our director of UN activities, and she runs our program both in Geneva and in New York. And we're extremely pleased to announce a new division of Family Watch, which is Family Watch Africa. And we have just appointed Dr. Sayum Antonios to be our director. He is a native of Ethiopia and is stationed there where the African Union is, and we'll be focusing a lot more on the African Union as well, and he'll be directing our activities throughout Africa. So I hope that you get to meet both of my colleagues throughout this week and the alternative conferences and workshops that we will be having. I'm wondering if you all want to stand up just for a minute, because you've been listening for an hour and a half, and just kind of stretch for 1 second, because we're going to be diving into some really difficult issues. I need you to be prepared. Some of the things I'm going to reveal to you are very troubling. So I'm going to ask you to fasten your seatbelts and be prepared, and know that I might bring you down pretty low with the things I'm going to expose to you, but we're going to get to positive things and hope and good news towards the end and things that we can do. So please don't despair. And with that, we'll move forward. Let me just ask, I'm missing one thing. Okay. So go ahead and sit down, and we'll go ahead. So the road to Nairobi, where does it lead? There was a big session at the United Nations saying, what is the road to Nairobi? And I'm going to show you with a lot of evidence. As you all know, this major conference is coming up the 12th through the 14th of this week coming up. And this tells us what this conference is about according to UNFPA. If you read through some of the elements of what they say it's about, it's universal access to sexual and reproductive health and rights is what they've been focusing on. And I'm going to reveal to you today what that agenda means and what the words that they use to push that agenda mean. The number 5 says, upholding the right to sexual and reproductive health care. We're going to talk about that as well. On the steering committee for this summit, you have Kenya, Denmark, and UNFPA. This is on Denmark's website, and it says Denmark's engagement with UNFPA, their main goal is the promotion of SRHR. It's a high priority of the Danish strategy. So what do they mean by sexual and reproductive health, the government of Denmark? This is their strategy for the promotion of sexual and reproductive health and rights. And they're talking about their final countdown for the ICPD Nairobi Summit in a tweet that they made. And they said sexual and reproductive health and rights. They list out all these things that it includes, including LGBTQI rights. So they're openly saying that's what this summit is partly about. We also have IPPF Global, Rutgers, which is the Netherlands affiliate of Planned Parenthood. This is International Planned Parenthood Federation. We have She Decides, which is also run by the Director General for International Planned Parenthood Federation. He's a big shaper of that program. All those people are on the steering committee for the Nairobi Summit. That will be significant as we move forward, but on the website it says the She Decides program is to counter Trump's global gag rule, meaning the rule that President Trump reinstigated in the United States that said that no foreign aid can go towards abortion from the United States. And so they're trying to counter that with the She Decides program, and the director for that is on the steering committee of the Nairobi Summit. Also on the steering committee is an organization called Women Deliver, and they are all about stopping that global gag rule and promoting abortion. Abortion is their main goal. Now, as you've already heard today, we have identified 35 pro-family, pro-life NGOs, even government people who've been blocked. Their registrations have not been accepted because they're excluding any pro-life voices that they can identify at this summit. Now, I'm going to focus now on UNFPA because they're the main organizer of this conference. What is the mission of UNFPA? Well, here's their strategic plan. It says, strategic direction of UNFPA, universal access to sexual and reproductive health and rights. Now, their spokesman at a conference in Washington, as reported by CFAM, his name is Arthur Erkin, he said, the reason we stayed out of the UN context is indeed because we realized trying to get some kind of agreement at the UN at this point, don't even bother. So they're trying to get around the UN system by bringing the Nairobi summit here and screening out anybody who doesn't agree with their agenda. He says, according to CFAM, Erkin spoke dismissively about the lack of consensus for sexual rights and other controversial issues, implying that wealthy donors are being on the right side of history. Okay, so UNFPA released some commitments that they're saying they want all the governments to agree to, instead of letting the governments come up with their own. And the main one is universal access to SRH, which we'll talk about more, ensure youth access to information, education, and services about their sexuality, and to invest in youth education, which includes SRH services. You could say the road to Nairobi, all roads lead to SRH services, which you'll learn about more. This is the schedule of the Nairobi Summit. I've just pulled off a few of their events to show their agenda. But they're trying to manipulate the African continent by trying to tie in discrimination because of color or African descent with SRHR services. It asks, what barriers stand in the way of people of African descent accessing sexual and reproductive health? Are they being discriminated again because of their descent? Trying to bring in racism. They have integrating sexual reproductive health and rights into universal health care coverage, and then they reveal in the description that this is also about lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender issues, and they're calling for an essential package of sexual and reproductive health interventions. Here's one called Learning from Best Practices Preventing Unsafe Abortion. It says essential SRH packages of interventions, and as a response to demands for choice and bodily autonomy, within the context of the medical abortion revolution and increasing anti-choice opposition. And this one is being run by Marie Stopes, one of the largest providers of abortion next to Planned Parenthood, the Guttmacher Institute, the former research arm of Planned Parenthood. She decides, UNFPA, and the World Health Organization. Now, on UNFPA's website, they ask themselves this question: does UNFPA promote abortion? And they say, no, UNFPA does not promote abortion, and UNFPA does not work to change laws in countries with regard to abortion. So I'd like you by the end of this presentation to answer that question for yourself, rather than accept UNFPA's answer. This is another event advertised on the website. Accessibility and Prevention, Public Health, Safe Abortion, and Human Rights. It says why it is critical to make safe abortion universally accessible. Okay, you'll notice one of the sponsors of this event is IPAS, and their main mission is to promote abortion. They're the ones who have produced the Easy Grip handheld abortion suction kit that they market throughout Africa. Another one is Keeping the Faith in Sexual and Reproductive Health and Rights. They're doing a big outreach to religious faiths to try to bring them into their radical SRH agenda. It says religious actors in advancing sexual and reproductive health and rights, religion, rights, and choices. Now we're going to talk about UNFPA's strategy that they launched for youth in preparation for the ICPD25 summit. My body, my life, my world. Sounds so nice. making informed choices over their own bodies. Doesn't that sound so nice? But what does that really mean? UNFPA's vision, a world where every young person can make their choices and enjoy their rights. What kind of rights? Well, UNFPA's approach is access to comprehensive sexuality education, emphasizing respect for adolescents' agency and autonomy. Agency and autonomy is code for without parental consent, getting these kind of services and this kind of education. UNFPA says it's in our DNA, rights and choices of adolescent youth. We need to be bold, we need to be vocal, we need to be visible. And here, it shows you what they mean by rights in my body, my world, my rights. They say it includes affirming sexual orientation and gender identity, and deciding when and with whom to have sex. It's a nice way to say a right for children to have sex. They want to increase access to sexual and reproductive health and rights, and comprehensive sexuality education for all children. Now, when we talk about what sexual and reproductive health is, we need look no further than this document called Sexual Health, Human Rights, and the Law that is published by multiple UN agencies and the World Health Organization, including UNFPA through the Human Reproduction Program that's logo is on here. And they say that sexual health includes sexuality, sexual practices, abortion, pleasurable sexual experiences, and the recognition of the diversity of sexual behavior and expression. So, if that's the definition for sexual health is half of sexual and reproductive health, and you add rights next to it, and you go sexual and reproductive rights, or sexual and reproductive health rights, you're getting rights related to abortion, sexual expression, sexual experiences, and diversity and such. In fact, this HRP, which is the Human Reproduction Program that has its logo on this manual as well, if you go to their website, you'll see which UN agencies, you can see their logos here. It includes UNICEF, and right under UNICEF, there's one NGO that's driving the agenda, I would propose, of this whole agenda that we're going to talk about today. It's International Planned Parenthood Federation. They're writing these manuals. And what do they teach? This is their booklet for HIV-infected youth, healthy, happy, and hot. It teaches them all about their sexual rights, saying they have a right to sexual pleasure, and that includes kissing, licking, tickling, suckling, cuddling, just have fun, explore, be yourself. But what troubles me the most, there's a lot more bad content in there, is this page. And this, it gets personal for me because our family has adopted 3 orphans from Mozambique. Their mother and their father died of AIDS, and I cared for their brother during the last stages of AIDS and watched his painful death. And this tells HIV-infected youth that they do not have to tell their sexual partners they're infected with the HIV virus. That laws that require them to tell their sexual partners is a violation of their international human rights. And this is the organization that all these UN agencies are partnering with to bring sexual and reproductive health and rights across the world. This is their core philosophy. It's perfectly normal. All sexual acts are perfectly normal. They endorse this book in the United States. You can see circled in the corner, it's for age 10, and in it, they have lots of pictures of different sexual acts. So why does Planned Parenthood care? Why are they trying to get these kind of things to children? We're going to talk about what happens when children become sexualized, when they exercise these so-called rights and choices or autonomy, okay? Then they're going to need services, because when they're sexually active, they're going to need condoms, contraceptives, abortion, hormones if they want to express their gender in a different way and try to transition to an opposite sex, sexual counseling. There is a lot of money in sexualizing children and getting them into your clinics. And this is how they get them into the clinics. UNFPA, again, in this strategy reveals that they are promoting the International Technical Guidance on Sexuality Education, their #1 tool to sexualize children and get them in their clinics is comprehensive sexuality education. And if you want to know what that is, you need look no further than this technical guidance that UNFPA is promoting for this the Nairobi Summit Youth Strategy. You can see all these UN agencies listed on this manual. This was published in January of 2018, the International Technical Guidance on Sexuality Education. And it defines sexuality. This is how the UN defines sexuality, so this is what they would be teaching in education. It includes sex, gender identity, sexual orientation, sexual intimacy, pleasure, and more. It redefines abstinence in this guidance from the UN. It says abstinence is not only refraining from having sex, but it also means deciding when to start having sex and with whom. And we're talking about children. It says abstinence-only programs, which don't exist, that's what they label any program that focuses on abstinence, have been found to be ineffective and potentially harmful to young people's sexual and reproductive health rights. CSE, the acronym for Comprehensive Sexuality Education, promotes the right to choose when and with whom a person will have a form of intimate or sexual relationship, and this is in the context of children of minor age. Children are to be taught to recognize that each person's decision to be sexually active should be respected, that engaging in sexual pleasures should be pleasurable. They need to summarize the elements. You know, how are you going to get that sexual pleasure in various forms and the responsibility related to it, and explain how someone's gender identity may not match their biological sex. This is bringing in the radical gender identity, transgender ideology, confusing youth about their very maleness and femaleness. Analyze social norms that contribute to homophobia and transphobia. Those are code words for religious beliefs around marriage and sexuality. Abstinence, let me see, I went the wrong way here. 1 second. Okay, this is the worst one to me, because Family Watch, our mission is to protect the institution of the family. And this one asks youth to differentiate between the values that they hold and that their parents hold regarding sexuality. For what purpose? Why would you want your the kids to differentiate their values from their parents? And here it says, there's a need to generate evidence for CSE to demonstrate the demand creation potential. CSE creates demand for what? This shows it's a marketing plan. It creates demand for youth-friendly SRH services that they provide. Planned Parenthood has 65,000 service points in 170 countries, and they're everywhere. We're fighting their programs and their sex ed programs in every state in the United States. We're helping countries across Africa and other countries as well. And this definition for what sexuality education is backed by the firepower of all these UN agencies, including the World Health Organization, which sets the health standards for the world, and UNICEF. Now let's talk about CSE specifically in the African continent. Planned Parenthood couldn't get their way, and the UN agencies in the UN negotiations, which is again why we have the Nairobi Summit here, and they can control everything about it. So they held a conference in Cape Town in 2013, invited education ministers, health ministers from Africa to come together to convince them that comprehensive sexuality education is going to solve all their problems. It's going to prevent teen pregnancy, STDs, promote gender equality, lift people out of poverty, prevent domestic violence. There isn't nothing that they don't claim comprehensive sexuality education will do. But then they don't show what's inside the manuals, what really it teaches. And I'm going to show you what's inside the manuals, because unfortunately 20 of these countries, including Kenya, the minister committed Kenya, and the other country ministers committed their countries to put comprehensive sexuality education in 75% of the schools by a certain date. And this is what it looks like. This is the African training on comprehensive sexuality education for East and Southern Africa. And I want you to notice down in the left-hand corner, UNFPA's logo, and above that is the logo of Advocates for Youth. Who is Advocates for Youth? This is Advocates for Youth website boasting about how they have done this teacher training and released this manual for Africa. Advocates for Youth is the youth partner of Planned Parenthood in the United States, and they promote all things Planned Parenthood. And in this advocacy, this is an African manual sponsored by UNESCO and UNFPA. It brings in the radical transgender ideology. It teaches that sexual identity consists of gender identity and sexual orientation. And listen to this carefully. Gender identity, this is their definition, knowing whether one is male or female, neither, or somewhere in between. Did you know you could be neither male or female or somewhere in between? Did you know that this is what the UN agencies are trying to teach your kids all across Africa and Planned Parenthood? This manual actually refers children, like I said, it's a marketing plan, CSE is a marketing plan, to Planned Parenthood clinics for what? Confidential services, that means without parental consent, counseling about abortion and abortion services, right in their own manual. It also says it's important to change the social norms and harmful practices that are not in line with human rights. Human rights according to who? We've already seen what they think human rights are. Then they have an example of Sydney and Grace. They're all alone at their houses. This is for teaching youth. She takes the initiative and performs oral sex. These are the kind of role plays or stories that they use to open the children's mind to these kind of things. They tell the teachers that if you can explore same-sex relationships, it can be a great opportunity to normalize relationships between gay, lesbian, and bisexual people. African manual. Now, here's UNFPA's new Safeguard Youth program. That's an oxymoron if you put UNFPA in the mix. Safeguard Youth program, okay? They realize that they're getting a lot of pushback in Africa in the schools and sometimes even from the governments. So they've created a phone app that your kids can download that you'll never see and you'll never know about. It's called Tune Me, UNFPA's project, okay? I did some searches on the app. I did one for consent. This is what it says. You can ask, this is how it teaches consent. Do you like when I do this? Do you want to do it to me? Is it okay if I take your shirt, your top, your bra, your pants off? Teaches about girls' orgasms in detail. What is oral sex? The different body parts you use. How the girls have orgasms. Masturbation, it's natural and normal. It's also a fun way to enjoy and explore your body. This is Smart Sister Self-Pleasure. I practice self-love in that context. I don't even want to read some of these. Ending a pregnancy is on this app. 2 types of terminations. They don't say abortion, they say empty the contents of the uterus. If you need help with that, you can call this helpline. Do you think you could be gay? Well, it's not uncommon for young people to explore their sexuality with the same sex. Is homosexuality a crime? Well, it's accepted and legal in many countries. No sex at all? No sex at all? Hard to imagine it, isn't it? Okay, we also have Women Deliver, who I mentioned before, who's on the steering committee, and they're working hard to get SRHR digital content. Now you know what that looks like. They're funded by the Ford Foundation and UNFPA. It says Zambia, Zimbabwe, Malawi. They're trying to add additional 4 countries, and this was a while ago, so I'm sure they're in more countries. The Safeguard Young People program has been going on for 3 years. They've reached 7 million, exposed 7 million youth to sexual and reproductive health and information. 1.7 million received their services as a result. Their marketing plan's not too bad. 78 million condoms distributed. What is it about? It's unleashing young people's potential. Doesn't that sound great? This is what they mean by youth empowerment. They're teaching youth to advocate for SRHR rights, increasing their knowledge and skills. They call what they're teaching, what I've shown you, protective behaviors. They're improving the quality and access of youth-friendly health services and teaching the youth to be the agents of change the ones that go out and advocate and demand this from your governments and at the United Nations. So they're trying to scale up comprehensive sexuality education throughout Africa. They say they empowered 6,000 youth. They've trained them to become these militant youth activists to push abortion, homosexuality, SRH, CSE, all of these things all throughout Africa. And they say they're coming to the UN General Assembly, whatever conferences they can get at. So, rights and choices for every adolescent and youth. That's UNFPA's global strategy. And what do they mean? This is very telling. This is a publication by UNICEF about legal minimum ages, about the realization of adolescent rights. Rights according to who? This says for adolescents to have access to sexual and reproductive health services without parental consent is a critical dimension of access. States should review and consider allowing children to consent to certain medical treatments. They're talking about without the permission of parents, such as education, that's CSE, guidance on sexual health, and they come right out and say abortion. UNICEF is saying children should be able to consent to abortion without their parents' consent. Then, as a youth strategy kit that UNFPA also launched for ICPD, they further show you their agenda on comprehensive sexuality education, SRHR services, and access to abortion. In that, they say ICPD key issues, even though these issues were never mentioned in the ICPD document that your government signed, are LGBTI and human sexuality. It's at the core of achieving the ICPD program of action. ICPD issues, how do they affect you? Comprehensive sexuality education. Again, they define it as allow you to decide, and you as youth, when and with whom they want to have sex. Access to abortion. You have safe options other than pregnancy. This is part of ICPD, according to UNFPA. ICPD key issue, LGBTI and human sexuality. Right to decide what your body and your sex characteristics look like, your gendered self, and who you wish to love. What they're getting at here, if you have a right to express your gendered self, we're talking about transgender rights, rights to puberty blockers, hormones, mutilating surgeries that remove healthy body parts and genitalia of the body and permanently alter them and make most people who go through that process infertile for life, and impairs, for many of them, their sexual functioning for life. And this is what UNFPA and all their UN partners and IPPF is promoting as sexual and reproductive health and rights for youth. This is crazy. They're telling youth in their strategy kit a new way to talk about the ICPD. This is UNFPA's new strategy. This framing allows conversations to expand beyond the issues that were included in the ICPD and calls for young people to make it their own. Make ICPD be whatever they want it to be, being carefully shaped by comprehensive sexuality education to make what they want what UNFPA wants for youth. Rights and choices to decide over their own bodies. Again, does UNFPA promote abortion? No. That's what it says on their website. This is kind of funny. They even have in their youth strategy toolkit something about SRHR and climate change. It says we need to do more to link comprehensive SRHR to climate change. They try to link it to every single issue, no matter how unrelated it may be. So we started with this question, the road to Nairobi, where does it lead? And if everything goes right, we've created a video where you can see in their own words, coming from their own mouths, at a UN meeting that was held several weeks ago from the organizers of the Nairobi Summit at UN headquarters, where they talk about the road to Nairobi and what's going to happen and what it's about and why they're going. And we've taken where they slipped and revealed their agenda in that session and put it together in one clip. So can we try to play that? Hopefully it will go for you. Okay.
For us, sexual and reproductive health and rights is one of the cornerstones of our development cooperation policy, and we try to use a truly integrated approach that includes the whole gamut of, and now I need to read because it's so much, access to information, commodities, medical prevention and care, sexual and reproductive health and rights, LGBTI rights, sexuality education, comprehensive sexuality education, harm reduction, access to safe abortion.
The groundbreaking achievements from 1994 are under attack. Former allies have changed positions, and we are now spending time, as many already have said, and resources trying to protect the agenda we agreed on 25 years ago, instead of making further advances. Norway is going to Nairobi to celebrate what we have achieved, but also to stand firm, to defend and to protect established norms and rights, to win new allies, and to push back the pushback.
And I've had the honor of serving on both Prime Minister Trudeau, but also President Macron's Gender Equality Advisory Council. And what we did was that we collated 79 progressive laws and legal frameworks within the whole lives of girls and women and gender equality, including the full suite of SRHR, safe abortion, CSE, family planning, and for all, also the most marginalized, the LGBTQI, people with disabilities. We put that forward with the encouragement to ditch your discriminatory laws, put in the progressive ones.
My body, my rights, my world. This, I think, is a crucial strategy for UNFPA at the global level, at the regional level, most importantly at the country level, to move the ICPD agenda. And this is why we have jointly been advocating for comprehensive sexuality education for young people.
Ladies and gentlemen, an important step forward is to digitalize comprehensive sexual education, something that UNFPA is looking into.
We got to change how we talk about it. We got to be inclusive. It's LGBTQI, it's people with disabilities, it's indigenous, it's everybody. Leave no one behind.
I come from Ireland. It's a land of significantly more freedom for women and girls since our people, by popular vote in May of 2018, repealed the draconian lines in our Constitution that restricted women's sexual, reproductive, and health rights. I took that opportunity to use my voice and influence to change the hearts and minds of my cabinet colleagues. And they were raised as Catholic. They were practicing Catholics. They changed their hearts and minds. They voted yes, and they are still Catholic.
And the universal health coverage agenda must privilege sexual and reproductive health and rights. But the rights and choices agenda is how we are going to fulfill the unfinished business of the ICPD.
Norway is a major donor to global health, including sexual and reproductive health and rights, and we are the biggest provider of core funding to UNFPA and the third largest donor to UN Women.
I'm going to Nairobi because sexual and reproductive health and rights are under attack. Sweden and our like-minded will not back down. I'm going to Nairobi because we will continue to defend SRHR as core human rights.
SRHR is a central priority and commitment in our foreign policy and development policy. For us, ensuring sexual and reproductive services and rights for everyone is the right thing to do.
Achieving these ambitious objectives resides in part, of course, with countries and other stakeholders making strong national commitments towards fulfilling the rights of women and girls and young people, including their sexual, reproductive, and health rights.
And then, of course, there is the pushback. Now, I think past week have showed us again that women's rights and sexual and reproductive health and rights are seen to be horse-traded in documents. Support for sexual and reproductive health and rights, despite what we say here, despite our worries, it's broad, it's growing, and it's cross-regional. We can push back against the pushback.
We're going to come with our people and with our money, and we'll bring our strategies and our history of 35 years of fighting for women's sexual reproductive justice.
I saw why it's so important that countries like Denmark continue to fight for women and girls' right to decide over their own body, their own life. We have to speed up the promise of Cairo reality before 2030, not least when it comes to gender equality and to women and girls' sexual and reproductive health and rights.
So hundreds of millions of women's and girls' lives have been touched in terms of ownership of one's body, one's life, and one's world. This impact hinges on rights and choices. The right to decide freely.
We see conservative winds blowing across the globe, and we see that in the negotiations, and we see that it is often a war fought over women's bodies. We see the same pushback blocking progress on the ICPD in country, and we find ourselves in a situation where groundbreaking achievements are being rolled back. But we will not go backwards.
We have people who are in power, leaders of some countries, who call our agenda on sexual and reproductive health and rights harmful, when in fact, I think denial of that agenda is what is seriously harmful.
The opposition is strong, but we're stronger. And there is a mobilization that I have personally not seen for many, many years. But we need to work harder, and we need to work smarter, and we need to keep that advocacy and noise level up.
Protect our gains and push back the pushback of other colleagues have said, and mobilize the political will, the civil society will, the private sector will to deliver on the unfinished business of the ICPD program of action.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Okay, well, she pulls up my last slides for me. You can find that video. You can download it. You can use it at familywatch.org/Nairobi Summit. You can't hear? I'm seeing some. Can you hear me? Okay, okay. You can find that video. And I just wanted to add, when we're talking about sexual and reproductive health, it's in the UN Sustainable Development Goals, that term. And many governments think, well, we have policies on sexual and reproductive health. It's in the UN Sustainable Development Goals, so it must be safe. We can use it. But because these groups couldn't get their agenda, abortion and comprehensive sexuality education and LGBT rights into those goals, and they tried, they're now redefining what the words in the goals mean. So they're redefining sexual and reproductive health and sexuality education to mean all of these things, or they're starting to even rename what sexuality education is called to match it and link it to the UN Sustainable Development Goals. I have some of their newer manuals that say, because of the pushback against comprehensive sexuality education, we're now going to call this program Sexual and Reproductive Health Education and Information, because that's the direct wording from the UN Sustainable Development Goals. And many countries think, well, because we agreed to it in the SDGs, we have to keep agreeing to it. We have to keep accepting it as a policy over and over again. That is false. The more nations accept this and continuing documents are in their own policies, the more the UN agencies have the opportunity to push their programs labeled as such. So, where's the slide's not moving. Hold on 1 second. The slides are stuck. We've got a frozen screen here, so. Okay, let me see. Because there's some other pictures I want you to see, so hopefully we'll fix it. While he's fixing that, I want to also make a very clear clarification about Family Watch's position on LGBTQI issues. We are against violence and extreme punishments against people based on their sexual orientation. We have other documentaries, and we have a lot of information on same-sex attraction, gender identity issues, and so forth and so on. Is that the last slide? Maybe there. Okay. Okay. And we know that many people experience these same-sex attractions or this gender confusion without wanting them. It's not something they asked for. And we know that they need support and they need help. But we do oppose encouraging children, or anyone for that matter, to act out on those attractions. The future. You've got the government, you've got the future families, you've got the future teachers, you have the culture because they're the rising generation. And that's why UNFPA and all these countries are focusing on youth. All their programs now are youth empowerment. And they're adding girls. Whenever they talk about women's rights, they add girls because that means they can get that agenda, whatever they're saying with women, to the girls. And that's a serious problem. So we're grateful that the Trump administration is standing up against this. And the second picture I was going to show you was of an African UN ambassador from Nigeria who held up the entire world fighting against comprehensive sexuality education at the UN Commission on Population and Development. A whole document related to the ICPD that had been negotiated by all the countries all night for multiple sessions was thrown out because on behalf of the African voting bloc, this brave ambassador refused to accept reproductive rights, which is a code name for abortion, and comprehensive sexuality education. So we have the Africans pushing back in a major way in New York. The problem is we also have UN documents being created at the UN Human Rights Council, and sometimes those delegations aren't as aware of the problems, and sometimes these kind of things get slipped into those documents. Then you have the African Union. And the African Union has different representatives from Africa, and we just heard from His Excellency from Zambia, the ambassador to the African Union, oh, we fixed it, that UNFPA and IPPF have been manipulating those policies, and it's a very deceptive agenda. It's very easy to be manipulated. So that was Ambassador Usman Sarki, who stopped CSE. And we have this video that we want you to mark this website, because this is going to show people online, very easy. We have a 10-minute version, we have a 30-minute version. You can send this out virally. This has changed laws and policies regarding comprehensive sexuality education in many countries. In fact, it caused a march on the education department here in Kenya a couple of years ago and started raising the awareness. When it was shown on the Uganda's parliamentary network, the parliamentarians thinking, oh, that can't be in Uganda, they went out and found the program that this documentary, The War on Children, exposes. They found it, and they were so upset, they actually passed a law against comprehensive sexuality education. And the United States is fighting the same thing in every state. I'm also the co-chair of the Protect Child Health Coalition in the United States. And this documentary is used across the United States. It's in many different languages, so it's a great tool. We also just had, I'm coming from Ghana, for the World Congress of Families, and we have Dr. Teresa Okafor, where is she? She should stand up. She's the regional director for the World Congress of Families for Africa. And they just had a phenomenal conference where many people came. I think it was 14 or 20 African nations, learning how to come together to protect the family, to protect children from this agenda. And those are going to continue to happen, and we want you to be a part of it. In fact, families around the world are rising up. This is in Mexico, where they rose up to protect parental rights and children. This is the protest in Kenya. This is featured in that documentary, The War on Children, at stopcse.org, saying no to CSE. And this just happened a few weeks ago. Namibia, the parents rose up to fight CSE. South Africa, their government just recently tried to roll out CSE, and they started marching against this plan. Parents are rising up. And in fact, in Ghana, because we were raising so much awareness about CSE around the World Congress of Families we just held, the president, the religious leaders rose up and put so much pressure on their president that he had to speak out when he was talking to a group of Islamic leaders. And he said, "It can never happen that I, as President of the Republic of Ghana, will sit and allow inappropriate material to be introduced to our kids." So he's now on record because of the pressure. We need everybody in their countries to start raising awareness, using that video, and putting pressure. And the Ghanaian bishops played a huge role in this. The religious groups play a huge role in rising up and raising awareness in the countries. And then this is our golden ticket to stopping comprehensive sexuality education. I'm pleased to announce that there is going to be a peer-reviewed journal published. It's called, article, it's called Re-examining the Evidence for Comprehensive Sex Education in Schools. And just last night, the publisher, it hasn't been printed yet in the journal, that'll happen in a couple weeks, sent me a copy and gave me a permission to print it out and make it available, but only for this conference. And so if you come to the alternative meetings, the other conference at the other venue at the Basilica, we're hoping to have copies for you. But this is a groundbreaking landmark study. What they did is that the Institute for Research and Evaluation, an independent research arm, they looked at the same data that UNESCO and the UN agencies cite to say comprehensive sexuality education will stop STDs and teen pregnancy, and abstinence programs don't work. They looked at the same studies they're using, and they found the opposite. They found a failure rate of 87% in schools worldwide for CSE, 89% in Africa, and they found that 24% of the programs in Africa actually increase sexual risks. So you can fight these programs with this data. No evidence. You can also find it, the larger report, on this website right now. It's online at sexedreport.org. You can just go to sexedreport.org and you can find all the details. So back to the Nairobi Summit. That's where we're headed in the next few days. And as you know, Kenyan Christian professionals in association with all their partners have done a wonderful job in putting on an alternative summit. We hope that you will go. If you've had trouble registering, ignore it and just show up and register on site. We need you there. Family Watch is going to put on more than 10 presentations going in depth on many issues related to pornography, related to CSE, related to sexual and reproductive health and rights, related to the cultural imperialism that's being perpetrated by the Western countries. We'd love to share as much knowledge and experience as we possibly can with you while we're here. We hope you're there, and we'll just end with this. Well, actually, you've been handed out a petition, I believe. Did anyone get a yellow petition in their hand? Was that handed out? Or white? It's white, okay. You've received a petition. Could you hand me that book, Dr. Siam? Anybody who fills that out today, I'll send you links to the Nairobi Summit video, but we'll also give you a copy, electronic copy, of our Family Defense Handbook that will give you all sorts of information about what we're talking about. We call it, well, it has talking points on all the issues related to abortion, comprehensive sex ed, gender identity. Really powerful tool that we hope to equip you with and empower you with. And if you come to the conference and you tell us you signed that petition, and you bring a friend with you, because we want you to bring people there. If you come to Family Watch's event and you tell a friend, we'll give you this nifty button that says Stand for the Family that you'll really, really like. So we want you to come, we want you to bring your friends, and we'll end with where we started, and that's the children. Our main focus now is protecting the health and innocence of children, the future parents, the future formers of families of every nation, because they know as well as we do that as the children go, so goes the family, so goes the nation, so goes the world. And we have a theme song at Family Watch. It's called Save the Family. And one of the stanzas goes like this, and this will be my final message. The family is the beating heart that keeps the nation strong. If families fail, then nations fall, and all that's good is gone. The time has come, the time is now, for everyone to see that if we are to save the world, we must save the family. Thank you.
So thanks once again, Sharon. Sharon had promised to make you angry. Are you angry enough? Eh? Or you're hungry? All right. Now we will take a few questions for Sharon to respond. Our intention was to finish the session at past. We are a few minutes past, but yes. Let's take a few questions and then we... Okay, so I'll start with Joyce.
Thank you so much. I would like to appreciate our presenters right from the World Youth Alliance and up to what is right now. My brother, you're right. Actually, she has made me more annoyed. And the annoyance is positively. And I want us to look at a few of those concrete statements that we are going to come with our people and the money. The opposition is strong, and we are stronger. And she raised in her presentation a question: does UNFPA promote abortion? 2 years ago, with due respect, I actually picked a co-role in a meeting with the regional UNFPA director, and this was carried in Kampala, Uganda. And they were talking about their services. Unfortunately, the Bishops' Conference had entered into partnership with them as UNFPA and the Bishops' Conference. And one of the key issues they were putting in the content of their partnership was the aspect of youth-friendly services. And after 1 year, we had gone for an evaluation. And in this evaluation, they wanted to bring more new ideas. You see the kind of energy they have. And the statement was, we have mobilized enough money to run the youth activities, and specifically we would like to strengthen the youth corners. That's how they were calling them. Now, when this man started giving his presentation, you know, they have very nice words to entice, and the whole idea thinking that if you speak about money to the Africans, they will say yes. Now, at the end of it all, I asked him one question. Are you married? Do you have children? And if you are, in these two, do you value them? And immediately he got a little bit nervous and annoyed. He said, but we are bringing you money because you are poor. Listen to this. We are bringing you money to run your youth programs because you are poor. Who told them we are poor? I told him, go back some years. Those who have very good history about the HIV/AIDS campaign, SCARJ, that Uganda was known to be one of the most actively involved in awareness creation among the youth in the scourge of HIV and AIDS. And that's when Uganda everywhere was being talked about that they are number one. They are number one. Why? The church entered so deeply. And I told him, we don't need your money because we have the structures. Within these structures, we can speak to our own leadership up to the grassroots and mobilize our own population, even without their money. Because she rightly said, we have the people. Now, the issue is all of us should be tickled in one way or the other. That I myself as an individual, as I listened to all these sharings, I should go and do something. Why am I saying this? We as Catholic Church, we have our alternatives. And these are the alternatives. About contraceptive promotion within our youth-friendly corners, we know what we can give our married young people. That is natural family planning. And we can use the behavior change model. We talk to the conscience of these young people instead of bringing materials that actually can lead them to death. They are killing our young people alive. Listen to such a comment that sexual education should be started at an age of 4 years of age. You Africans, where are we heading to? Just look at that. As a mother, I'm a mother. As a mother, and you are going to start speaking to your child, I'm a teacher too, to people's children, that it is a pleasure, that it's your right. We're going to say, but they have the money, we have nothing to do. No, that's not the way to go. We should all be challenged and get alternatives. Even if they have the billions, we have the resources, we have the structures. I think our brother right up there who is moderating this, our bishops should start writing pastoral letters in line with such critical issues.
Is there any priest left in the hall?
They should speak. And once they speak, for us as Catholics, we say our elders have spoken and we follow them. And we are going to make sure we really fight these people. They have the energy, they have the resources, but we have the brain, we have the human resource. And we are going to fight them in our own style as Catholics and promoting the human dignity and telling all our people, up the small Christian communities, especially the youth, that pleasure is not only got from sex. And if it is done at the right place, and that is the family. Thank you so much.
So Sharon, you're doing a good job. You've succeeded in making people angry. That's what brought us here. For the record, the Holy See, representative of the Pope at the UN, has disassociated themselves from the International Conference on Population and Development 25th Summit. The bishops of Kenya released a press statement on the 8th of November, and they had an entire section condemning ICPD. The Interreligious Council in this country released a statement a week ago condemning the ICPD. The Evangelical Alliance are likely to release a statement today or tomorrow. So people are angry, okay? We've been doing some work making them angry. I hope the momentum remains that way. Another question.
Thank you so much. My name is Ajula Moses. I'm a student here in the Catholic University of Eastern Africa. I would first like that the audience may add another hand clap to the presenters, because they've done quite a very good job. In my experience and observation as a person who has been many times directly in the communities, I was worried. But now after observing, listening, and seeing the presentation, what people are intending for us, I get more worried. Because if they succeed, all of us are affected. Nobody will remain discriminated. For that reason, I now ask my fellow brothers and sisters, this is a war. From their words, you can hear This is a war. They are going to do anything possible to see that their agenda succeed. But my only appeal is, from their plans, the achievement will come from us. I ask each of us to stand firmly, irrespective of whichever status you have, whether poor or rich. Let us say no. And do anything possible as an individual that can take to see that that agenda can be failed. I happened one time to do a client exit interview about a certain services offered by a certain organization to especially the youth. And what I found basically on their reproductive health, nobody was happy to accept and take these services voluntarily. But it seems there is a force behind that forces somebody to go for those services, even when they know that these are killing us softly and slowly, but sure. We are there. And this is happening everywhere. If you do not know, you know that if you're one of them, one day you will surely see the effects of such services. In the primary schools, I happened to meet one of my brother's child, a female child, is telling me about cancer screening. For a child of 5 years, what does that child know about cancer? And what process does it take for anyone to do the cancer screening? What does that child know about sex? And here, these are schools which have head teachers, fully fledged administration, and committees, and they're allowing these things to happen. I am asking each and every one of us, please, this is the war, which me I can call it is Third World War, which they're using a biological mechanism to see that we cease. So it is our responsibility to decide either to accept it or continue and accept them to do harm to us. But remember, don't say that it will affect the others, but it will affect all of us in one way or the other. All of us are affected. Thank you. Mine was not a question, but was a compliment. Thank you so much. God be blessed. Bless all of you.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to return to the panelists. Do you have a question on the floor? Question, sister. I hope it's not a comment. All right, sister, go ahead. I've already broken the rules, so.
Actually, it's a comment. And before I comment, I want to appreciate the presenters. Mine is to just call into attention about this encyclical letter of Pope Francis on Laudato Si. From listening, I think that is a letter that can help us address this crisis. Pope articulates that our problem is not health, but selfishness, lack of stewardship. We have been given a life by God. The life belongs to Him. And we do not assume that we are the creators of that life to manipulate it the way we want. So it's like we have something in our pocket and we have forgotten that we have it, and we are looking all around only to discover that what we need is within us. We have the structures in place. The Catholic social teaching actually calls upon us to be stewards of one another, to live out this culture of selfishness, trying to amass everything and making other people look poor, and we become rich so that we can manipulate them. So if we actually love one another as brothers and sisters, the way Laudato Si gives us, then we shall not be planning for other people to kind of look at what we have in place as if they are the ones leading us to salvation. Christ has come to die for us so that we get life after that. So it is not the people sitting in Nairobi there to tell us that this is what we need for our survival. And we can even ask a simple question. What is the age of the people coming to give us about these health productive lessons? If we look at these people killed, we shall find that they are beyond the age of maybe producing, giving life. Why are we concerned about the people who have not been affected and who have even solutions for this? Let the young people learn the right information and give answers, but not we who have gone beyond telling us that this is the right thing for us. The issue is selfishness. The issue is we have amassed wealth which we do not want to use it in the right place. We wanted to make that wealth to suppress the people who are supposed to benefit from that wealth. Thank you very much. I am Sister Kinkonda Okemasis. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister. I'd like now to return the microphone to the front for closing remarks from Family Watch. Good people, I see some people moving out, but when we go for our afternoon tea, we should be back at 20 minutes after 2. We have to show the blockbuster movie Unplanned. If any of your friends are not yet here, tell them we are showing a movie in the next 30 minutes. Just send a text to them so they don't miss out. So Family Watch, please do your closing remarks.
So I'm just going to briefly leave you with a few things you can do. Number one, if your country is part of the African CSE commitment that the UN and IPPF manipulated, you need to put pressure on your government to pull out of that commitment. That's number one. And Kenya is one of those countries. Number two, you need to kick the foreign organizations and UN agencies out of your schools. And the way that you can do that is by passing some protection laws here. You could pass a law in your country, for example, that says no organization that promotes or performs abortion can provide instruction or teachings in the schools. You could pass a law that says the sensitive issues of sexual orientation, gender identity, and masturbation are the purview of the parents and shall not be taught in your country's schools. We have a series of protection laws that you could put forward. You could say no sex education shall be taught in the schools without permission, prior permission, written consent from the parents with full disclosure of everything that's going to be in there. So please contact us if you're interested in helping to do some solutions that can help protect the children from this agenda. And I'll just ask my colleagues to come up here for 2 minutes. They're also going to give you something that you can do to help protect the family and protect children.
Thank you, Sharon. People coming from Episcopal conferences, I think you see the reason necessary to keep our parliamentary liaisons and our engagements with governments more advocacy-like in character. Yes.
Thank you. So good to be here and to feel of your strength in some of the comments that have been given. And we feel this. It's my first time in Kenya, actually in this part of Africa, and I'm totally jet-lagged, but I can feel that even though I'm really tired, I can feel your strength. And there's strength, in working in unison in things. And one of the things that I could recommend to you is when we, I go to the UN a lot the last 15 years and work in the commission, work with the delegates, the diplomats, but also work with people who are just there maybe with a school group, and they're only there for maybe 5 days, and they really get it. You know, they say, I want to do something. So one of the things that we've proposed to them is, if you can't be like we are at the UN all the time, there are things we propose to you. One of them is called the UN Family Rights Caucus. And it's a caucus that we created after one of the sessions where a lot of women and people from Africa were saying, we want to do something, but we're not here all the time. So they have small organizations, they're sometimes even individuals, and they can join this caucus. It's the UN Family Rights Caucus. You can join as an individual, or you can join if you have a small organization, a big organization. Some of the bigger pro-family organizations are on there. And we'll send you what is going on at the UN so you can keep up a little bit of what's going on. And when there are something that affects your country and that we send you, you can have your voice be heard through this process. So one of the things I suggest to use your strength in is join the UN Family Rights Caucus. Thank you.
That's Dr. Seyum.
I would like to say thank you to all of you. We have been extremely honored by your presence this morning and of course this afternoon. And I would like to just say that Africa has become the new frontier in the past decade or so, and we have to stand up and say no. Like His Excellency the Zambian ambassador to Ethiopia and permanent representative to the African Union shared with us this morning, there are so many things that are going on at this very moment, trying to bring African Union as part of this SRHR agenda. And in the coming few days, we'll be talking about this in one of our presentations. So we'd like you all to be there and listen to those presentations and pressure your officials, your leaders to say no, especially when agreements are being done. They know how to manipulate our leaders to just get a sign, their signatures, so that it will be an outcome document and will be implemented. And I would like to say that the whole agenda of SRHR has never become a law, an international law in the UN document, but they bring it up now and then as a law, as a human rights issue. So we have to stand and fight it back, and the time is now, and Africa will never be the same again. Thank you.
All right. So good people, join me in doing another big clap for Family Watch. And another one for World Youth Alliance again. For every one or two slides that you've seen, there is an entire presentation within the week. If you cannot attend, send a friend who will share with you what will be happening. People who are not here have had the opportunity for the streaming, but down there we'll only stream 2 rooms, and we have 8 rooms. So 8 topics will be covered concurrently. So please send your friends, squeeze some time, and be there. We are now going to have our cup of tea in the same order we had in the morning, and we return here in 30 minutes so that we can do the movie. I promise you we will be done not later than 4 when we return for the movie. Okay? Interact with everyone you're seeing for the first time. Stop sitting close to those you already know. Enjoy your tea. Thank you. So let's meet in 30 minutes.